Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe and Master of all. Father, I pray that you help us and guide us through these chapters in Exodus to understand the message beneath the message that you'd like us to understand. Please know that we do this Bible study for your glory and your glory alone. All praise be to you, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
It's in the group chat.
Yes, sir. I sent it.
You
I
see.
said bag secured, boys, or something like that.
Oh, there you go. They forgot the pickles.
I was referencing SpongeBob.
It's funny because I don't eat my Chick-fil-A with pickles.
Like at all?
No, I've slowly entered back into pickles because I just didn't like pickles as a kid, and then but as I grew up, I love spicy pickles, and then I stopped eating them because they'd mess up my stomach a little bit. But so I've just always been a no pickle guy, and I'm just recently kind of like, you know what, I'll take the pickles.
I get you.
Alright,
You know
so-
what you really need to try? If you
Hmm.
get the spear pickles and you put a packet of ranch seasoning in there, make ranch pickles. Dude, it's so
Whoa.
good. And then my roommate, it sounds weird, but my roommate will put a Kool-Aid packet in with it instead of ranch. That's
Ooh.
actually really good.
That's crazy.
It doesn't sound good, but it's really good.
While we're waiting for Stampy, I got an idea real quick.
But yeah.
So I was watching a video the other day, right? And it was this mathematician.
Mhm.
He was talking about how he thinks mathematics proves God's existence, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And hold on, I'm trying to find my notes on it. I've got too many notebooks where I write down my ideas. Okay, so I got mathematics is outside of human beings, meaning it exists independently from us, right? So like that was his logic, right? Is mathematics is, I mean, clearly it's like the language of the universe, right? Like, but it simply like an expression of what we see in the universe, right? Like the mathematics doesn't make the black hole exist; it just describes the black hole. And it's universal, right? So anybody can use it, anybody can access it. It all means the same thing.
The common language is what.
Yeah. It's like it's outside of. It's not something that seemingly that we created, right? It's just something that we use to describe what has already exists. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So then, like, so I said, so it begs the question: where or whose mind does mathematics exist or originate? So my idea that kind of stemmed off of this, right, is the original sin of the apple is a blessing and a curse. Because if so, and my thought process on this, right, is so when we ate the apple, right, it gave us, like, at its core, right, it gave us the ability to reason, right? That's really what it did, right? Because there was the tree of life in there that if we had eaten from, right, we would live forever, but we wouldn't have the ability to reason. We wouldn't have the ability to know what is right and what is wrong. So in some ways, right, it's like even in like my thought process is, I'll continue. I know I'm rambling, so I apologize, but the original sin of the apple is a blessing and a curse. If we had not eaten from the tree, or if we had eaten from the tree of life rather than knowledge, we would have been cursed to have lived eternity without reason, to have never been able to know right from wrong. In this way, God blessed us even in our sin, because the tree we ate from allowed us to be able to reason and formulate arguments that helped rationalize our world and understand the path back to God. Also help others with questions, so on and so forth. So then I kind of like, I have another journal that I keep that's like thought experiments for like philosophy, because I like to be nerdy about stuff like that. My thought experiment is it better for us to have eaten from the tree of knowledge, or would another option have been better? So I was just curious while we're waiting. I don't know if Stan is ready, but I was curious your guys' thoughts. Or if you think I'm completely insane, that's fine too.
Repeat the question. You said
so more or less, like,
knowledge?
do you think that us eating from the tree of knowledge is a blessing in disguise, or do you think it would have been a better option for us to? I mean, obviously the alternative, right, is well, it would have been better if we just not done anything at all and we had just abided by God's word, which I'll grant you that, but I would argue that it was always going to happen. So in the circumstances, like clearly,
Yes, I
right?
understand. I think that because there's other ways we could have sinned, right? Like Adam
Yeah, I
and
mean, we
Eve
could have eaten from the tree of
sinned.
life, which would have also been not good either, right? So, which is
Right,
part of the reason why we got kicked out because he didn't want us to eat from both the tree of life and knowledge. So,
right. Yeah, I know that. Because I mean, there's other ways we could have sinned that
well,
would have
sure,
been
right.
even not even.
Those are
that,
just
that
two
would have-
examples.
Yeah, exactly. I think that maybe the way that I know that God is very intentional, and I know that like even in reading Luke, it talked about how in Jesus's prayer, right? How it was. He talks about how you know Judas had to betray him, right?
Mhm.
Like
Oh yeah, exactly.
he had to do it because to make the scriptures correct, right?
Right.
So that's a really interesting thing that I'm kind of going over in my head. Like, okay, wait, so God, is obviously incapable of evil, but there's certain things that have to happen that may seem evil at the time, but like Jesus kind of said, like he understood like that. Hey, this had to happen in order for everything to work out the way it did.
Yeah.
And so maybe like from what I understand, for just hearing this for the first time, is maybe that is the way that humans needed to sin in order to give us
Right.
the
Yeah. My
ability
argument
to
is that
reason,
we were
right?
always imperfect and we were always going to sin. So God used the devil to make us sin in the way that we did sin, so that way he could lead us back to himself by being able to rationalize and being able
Wouldn't
to
that
correct
be?
wrong.
I feel like that's an absolute. Like, what I wonder is that if God, like, I don't know if this is something I just am being silly and not remembering, but like Satan. I mean, God knew what Satan was doing, right?
100%.
Lucifer. So it's almost like I wonder if it was a similar thing with Job, or if God always knew that like, hey, Lucifer is going to fall, and so the best way to do this is to allow him to tempt them with this item that will allow
Right.
them discernment and reasoning.
Well, yeah, because like if you go back, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean.
No, it will. It will. In my perspective, it's almost just looks like he's the master planner, right? So it almost just looks
100%.
like he had a plan, and it almost gives me a sense of reassurance, like a feeling of reassurance, because
Mhm.
because I know that God has the plan on top of the plan on top of the plan. He made the plan. You know what I mean? And so that's all I want to say now because I need to think about it more. But it's very interesting. I almost immediately agree with it, but I want to think more about it. But.
No, yeah, it just feels like it makes me think that like obviously God has like he's outside of time, right? So he always knew that it was going to happen.
Right.
So
And that's
it's like
something
he
so
did that
long.
simple thing, like we talked about in I think it was in a later part of Genesis, right? Or maybe it was a different book. I don't remember for sure, but we talked about it before. Where I think it was with the brothers and trying to kill Jacob, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Genesis.
How he's like, well, he knew that they were going to do that, so maybe he just used what they were going to do to fulfill his plan, so to speak. So it's like he knew that the devil was going to fall. He knew that the devil was going to try to tempt us to spite him. So he used that evil plan and the fall to get us back to him, anyways.
Gotcha.
That's just,
agree.
and again, I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just thinking out loud. I just
Well,
like
I
to
heard-
think about weird stuff like that. So.
I heard somewhere that sometimes the devil will make your life easy
Oh, 100%.
so that you can just fall into sin easier. That way you follow him. But God will test you and give you opportunities to prove yourself to him.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way that I see it. It's just it was a test for humanity, and
I'm sorry.
like some people, as we see, like Adam wasn't the one who failed, right? And I guess that proves his loyalty to God to an extent. And Eve was the one who failed. I guess you could word it that way. So I think that just kind of goes to show that.
So the only thing I'll push back on that is it wasn't Eve that failed. It was Adam that failed.
Oh, okay.
And only because it's Adam's job to make sure that Eve doesn't fail. Right? Like that's the job of. It's a man's job. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
it even says
you're supposed to, and it mentions that, right? Like God like chastises Adam for that.
And it whenever because God goes to both of them, obviously, right? And something to learn from that. We actually talked about this when we were studying the beginning of Genesis, but it says that God called upon. It says in verse 9 of chapter 3. It says, Adonai called to the man, and he said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "Your sound, I heard it in the garden, and I was afraid because I am naked. I hid myself." Then he said, "Who told you that you are naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat?" Then the man said, "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate." Right? And so God actually goes to the man first.
Right.
Eve, because it says in verses 13 after the fact that that verse I just read, then it says, "Then Lord said to the woman," right? "What did you do?" But it's interesting how she said, "The serpent deceived me and I ate." Both of them blamed somebody else for their own sin, but also to God, just for the context we're speaking about, God went to Adam first, even though he wasn't the one who was even deceived by the serpent and grabbed and ate the fruit first, right? So that just kind of puts a little for me, that makes me realize too, like, hey, this was God's going to Adam because it was Adam, he's the head. Like Eve was taken from his rib, you know what I mean? And so I think that was on, and just something to learn from is they both blamed other people for their own mistake.
Right. Yeah, so I read so I've got like the Tony Evans Study Bible, 10 out of 10 recommended, by the way. But so like one of his cliff notes, right, is it says, when God called to Adam, "Where are you?" he was calling Adam to ask because Adam was the leader and had failed. To those men abandoning their families or failing to lead spiritually, God also says, "Where are you? Step up and be the men I created you to be." So it's like it's his job as the leader, right, to make sure that the group stays whole and that the group stays, I guess in this case, right, like following God's command. So that would be the only thing that I would, I guess, push. It's like because I think a lot of people like, and you hear it like with jokes, right? Like, oh, like it's women's fault that we're not in the God. But like at the end of the day, it's I still place the blame at our feet personally.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that it's our responsibility. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so I mean, it's just like, yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting idea to think about for me.
And too, Matt, it just kind of, like I said, I initially want to believe that because it answers a lot of like the biggest questions people always ask. Well, if God knew humans were going to sin, then why did he even create us or whatever? But it almost makes sense. Like if, because he created, I don't know what was going on in heaven, right? Like before all of this and the relationship that Lucifer, I knew that Lucifer was one, appeared to be the most beautiful of all angels. He was made of pipes and organs.
Right.
He was in charge of looking after the Garden of Eden. From what I've been explained, he was doing all this work, looking after them. And he felt like, hey, he deserves to be glorified because of the work he's doing. And anyways, I just feel like I feel like I could almost see. I don't want to speak in God's shoes at all, but I almost feel like it's the same thing I see like in Job, like where he's like, okay, like go ahead, like I already have a plan, right? I already know what you're gonna do. I already know how you're gonna do this. So go ahead,
right? And because he's outside of time, you already knew Job would succeed.
And look at the lineage of the names immediately after to follow, right? And that's another thing I want to tie in. Is like the names of Adam's descendants are literally the Messiah coming and bringing liberation to humanity.
Right.
You know what I mean? So God had a plan, and I think this idea almost glorifies God's, because I think people try to use this to slander God's wisdom, like say, "Oh well, look at this, God's creation failed." Right, but in reality, something I can't even fathom. This might just have been the best way to go about this, especially with what was going on in heaven. You know, because I don't know what's going on in heaven. I don't know if there's like a courtroom, or there's like this how they decide made their decisions, or what, because it says in Genesis, once that I think it's chapter 13, after the sin of Adam and Eve, God looks to his angels and says, they have become like us, right? Like knowing good and bad.
Right.
And so obviously they know what's wrong and right. And so I don't know. That's
that
really
ability to know
topic
right
to
and
me.
wrong is like, that's the original, like, that's like you knowing what is right and wrong is the very root of being able to rationalize, right? Because that's how it starts. That's like the infancy of
Mhm.
of being able to rationalize, like a black hole.
Yeah.
Like that's, like way down the line.
Yep.
It's just starting with knowing right from wrong. And I think that's I wouldn't even argue that's I can't think of any other possibility that's almost self-evident, because you even like that's how children learn. That's how we teach our children, right? Like the first thing that they learn, you like
Right.
no, yes, and obviously other simple things, but like that's like the basis of where we start their learning, and then obviously based on that foundation, then they later on are able to rationalize much deeper. But
I can tell you from experience that the first thing, like even with a puppy, think about with a puppy, the first thing you tell them is no, like no, you don't do that, or
Right.
hey, yes, you do this. This is good. This is bad, right? And so much of our life starts with just that.
Yeah,
right?
and another one that just real quick, and then we can actually start. So another one that really stuck out to me, because when I'd like go back and like read it when I was thinking about this is, and one of the ones that I hear people lie or say about all the time, and not even lie, I think they misunderstand it, is like the serpent says to her, right? So woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit from the trees in the garden, but about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden, God said, you must not eat it or touch it, or you will die. And he's like, well, he's lying to you. He's lying to you. You're not going to die if you eat it, right? Like that's what Satan says back to him. But if you really if you think about it, right, it's like that's one. But well, he lied to Adam and Eve. They didn't die. Clearly, we ate it. It's like no, but we did die, right? Like we were cast out of heaven and cursed to death because we sinned. Prior to that, there is no death, right? So did we die right then and there as soon as we ate it? No, but yes, he condemned us to death because, what is it? The wages of sin is death. So literally, we did die as a result of eating that apple. And everybody has subsequently, for all of human history, died because of that one bite.
Exactly. And another interesting point about the way he deceived is when he says, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says in verse 22, then the Lord said, behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Like literally, Satan used a truth, right? Wrapped up in a deception.
The best lies
that
have a
is
grain of truth, right?
Dude, that's that's something we just all got to be super careful of, is that he will appear as angel of light, right? And he'll use a truth and wrap it up in deception. And anyways, I thought that was an interesting point.
I agree.
Said that.
Yeah. All right,
what's up, Stampy?
Jump back forward. I just was wanting to talk about that while we're waiting on Stampy.
Yeah. There's only so many rooms in a hotel,
Yeah.
I agreed.
Yeah. Like only certain people are fit to be there.
Yeah.
And some people pay their dues to be there.
It seems exceedingly small, unfortunately. Yeah. The number of people, not heaven, but like the number of people that are actually going to go.
Mm-hmm. What's up, Stampy?
How you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
All right, I guess. 21? Does anybody want to start, or do you want me to start? I can start if not.
I'll start.
Yeah.
I can start. You guys want to go like 5 chapters and then discuss? I know we started a little late, but
I think that's. I like that.
if we can do more of this, I'm done. But all right, chapter 21 of Exodus, ordinances for the covenant. Now these are the ordinances which you will set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve for 6 years, and in the 7th he is to go free without payment. If he comes in by himself, he is to go out by himself. If he was married, then his wife will go out with him. If his master gave him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children will be her master's, and he will go free by himself. But if the servant plainly states, I love my master, my wife, and my children, and I will not go out free, then his master is to bring him to God. Then take him to a door or to a doorpost. His master is to pierce his ear through with an awl, and he will serve him forever. If a man sells his daughter to be a maidservant, she is not to go free as the male servants do. If she does not please her master, who has selected her for himself, then he is to allow her to be redeemed. He will have no power to sell her to a foreign people, seeing as he has dealt deceitfully toward her. If he bethoughts her to his son, he must give her the rights of a daughter. If he takes another wife, he is not to diminish her food, her clothing, or her marriage rate. If he does not provide these 3 to her, then she is to go free without payment. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies must surely be put to death. But if he did not hunt him down, yet God caused it to happen, then I will appoint for you a place where he may run. If a man presumes to kill his neighbor with craftiness, you are to take him from my altar and put him to death. Anyone who strikes his father or his mother must surely be put to death. Anyone who steals a person or sells him or is found with him under his hand must surely be put to death. Whoever curses his father or his mother must surely be put to death. If people quarrel, and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and the other does not die but lies in bed, if he rises again and walks around on his staff, then the one that struck him, he will be cleared. But he must pay for the loss of his time and help him to be thoroughly healed. If a man strikes his male or female servant with a staff, who dies by his hand, he must surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if the servant gets up in a day or 2, he will not be punished, for he is his property. Sorry, I lost my. Okay. If men fight and hit a pregnant woman so that her child is born early, yet no harm follows, the one who hit her is to be strictly fined, according to what the woman's husband demands of him. He must pay as the judges determine. But if any harm follows, then you are to be penalized. You are to penalize life for life, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, blow for blow. If a man strikes the eye of his male or female slave and destroys it, he must let him go for the sake of his eyesight. If he strikes out his slave's tooth, he must let him go free for the sake of his tooth. If an ox gores a man or a woman so that they die, the ox must surely be stoned and its meat not to be eaten, but the owner of the ox will be cleared. If the ox was given to goring in times past, and a warning has been given to its owner, yet he has not kept it pent up, and it has killed a man or a woman, then the ox must be stoned, and its owner must also be put to death. If instead a ransom is placed on him, then he is to pay for the redemption of his life whatever is demanded. Whether it has gored a son or daughter, this rule is to be applied to him. If the ox gores a male or female slave, he is to pay 30 shekels of silver to the master, and the ox is to be stoned. If one uncovers a pit or digs a pit, and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls in, the owner of the pit must pay compensation. He is to give money to the owner, and the dead animal will be his. If one man's ox hurts another ox so that it dies, they are to sell the live ox and divide the price. They are also to divide the dead one. Or if it becomes known that the ox was given to violence in times past, and its owner was not kept it pent up, he must surely pay ox for ox. The dead animal will be his own. If a man steals an ox or a sheep and kills it or sells it, he is to pay 5 oxen for 1 ox or 4 sheep for 1 sheep.
That the last couple lines there that you read were in chapter 22 for me.
Yeah, same here.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It started when chapter 22 starts for me. When a man steals an ox. That's where it starts for me.
Dang.
Yeah, same here.
I mean, it's infinitesimally small. Just
Okay.
but still. It's
I
interesting.
can read this next one.
Go for it.
If a thief is caught breaking in at night and is struck a fatal blow, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. But if it happens after sunrise, the defender is guilty of bloodshed. Anyone who steals must certainly make restitution, but if they have nothing, they must be sold to pay for their theft. If the stolen animal is found alive in their possession, whether ox or donkey or sheep, they must pay back double. If anyone grazes their livestock in a field or vineyard and lets them stray, and they graze in someone else's field, the offender must take restitution from the best of their own field or vineyard. If a fire breaks out and spreads into thorn bushes so that it burns shocks of grain or standing grain or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. If anyone gives a neighbor silver or goods for safekeeping and they are stolen from the neighbor's house, the thief, if caught, must pay back double. But if the thief is not found, the owner of the house must appear before the judges, and they must determine whether the owner of the house has laid hands on the other person's property. In all cases of illegal possession of an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, or any other lost property about which somebody says, "This is mine," both parties are to bring their cases before the judges. The one whom the judges declare guilty must pay back double to the other. If anyone gives a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or any other animal to their neighbor for safekeeping, and it dies or is injured or is taken away while no one is looking, the issue between them will be settled by the taking of an oath before the Lord, that the neighbor did not lay hands on the other person's property. The owner is to accept this and no restitution is required. But if the animal was stolen from the neighbor, restitution must be made to the owner. If it was torn to pieces by a wild animal, the neighbor shall bring in the remains as evidence and shall not be required to pay for the torn animal. If anyone borrows an animal from their neighbor and it is injured or dies while the other is not present, they must make restitution. But if the owner is with the animal, the borrower will not have to pay. If the animal was hired, the money paid for the hire covers the loss. If a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price, and she shall be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay the bride price for virgins. Do not allow a sorceress to live. Anyone who has sexual relations with an animal is to be put to death. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord must be destroyed. Do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt. Do not take advantage of the widow or the fatherless. If you do, and they cry out to me, I will certainly hear their cry. My anger will be aroused, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives will become widows, and your children fatherless. If you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not treat it like a business deal. Charge no interest. If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, return by sunset, because that cloak is the only covering your neighbor has. What else can they sleep in? When they cry out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. Do not blaspheme God, or curse the ruler of your people. Do not hold back offerings from your granaries or vats. You must give me the firstborn of your sons. Do the same with your cattle and sheep. Let them stay with their mothers for 7 days, but give them to me on the 8th day. You are to be my holy people, so do not eat the meat of an animal torn by wild beasts. Throw it to the dogs. Do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. When you give a testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd, and do not show favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit. If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, be sure to return it. Oh, sorry. I definitely read into 23.
I was about to say,
I can
dang, is that different too?
I wasn't even paying attention. That's my bad. Yeah, I can continue if y'all want.
I mean, it's up to you. If you want to, you can.
Yeah, that's fine. If you see the donkey and if you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure you help them with it. Do not deny justice to your poor people in their lawsuits. Have nothing to do with a false charge, and do not put an innocent or honest person to death, for I will not acquit the guilty. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds those who see and twists the words of the innocent. Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops, but during the 7th year let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among your people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what is left. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days do your work, but on the 7th day do not work, so that your ox and donkey may rest, and so that the slave born in your household and the foreigner living among you may be refreshed. Be careful to do everything I have said to you. Do not invoke the names of other gods. Do not let them be heard on your lips. 3 times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. Eat bread made without yeast, as I command you. Do this at the appointed time in the month of Aviv, for in that month you came out of Egypt. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Celebrate the festival of harvest with the first fruits of the crops you sow in your field. Celebrate the festival of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather your crops from the field. 3 times a year all the men are to appear before the sovereign Lord. Do not offer the blood of a sacrifice to me with anything containing yeast. The fat of my festival offerings must not be kept until morning. Bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. See, I am sending an angel ahead of you to guard you along the way, and bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion, since my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies, and I will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. Do not bow down before their gods or worship them or follow their practices. You must demolish them and break their sacred stones to pieces. Worship the Lord your God, and his blessing will be on your food and water. I will take away sickness from among you, and none will miscarry or be barren in your land. I will give you a full lifespan. I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion every nation that you encounter. I will make all your enemies turn their backs and run. I will send the hornet ahead of you to drive the Hivites and Canaanites, Hittites out of your way. But I will not drive them out in a single year, because the land would become desolate and the wild animals too numerous for you. Little by little I will drive them out before you, until you have increased enough to take possession of the land. I will establish your borders from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea, and from the desert to the Euphrates River. I will give into your hands the people who live in the land, and you will drive them out before you. Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. Do not let them live in your land, or they will cause you to sin against me, because the worship of their gods will certainly be a snare to you.
All right. Then he said to Moses, "Go up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu." I'm so horrible with names in this. And 70 of Israel's elders, and bow and worship at a distance. Moses alone is to approach the Lord, but the others are not to approach, and the people are not to go up with him. Moses came to the Lord and told the people. Moses came and told the people all the commands of the Lord. and all the ordinances. Then all the people responded with a single voice, "We will do everything that the Lord has commanded." And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. He rose early the next morning and set up an altar and 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel at the base of the mountain. Then he set out young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed bulls as fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took half the blood and set it in basins. The other half of the blood he splattered on the altar. He then took the covenant scroll and read it aloud to the people. They responded, "We will do and obey all the Lord has commanded." Moses took the blood, splattered it on the people, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you concerning all these words." Then Moses went up with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of Israel's elders, and they saw the God of Israel beneath his feet, something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as clear as the sky itself. God did not harm the Israelite nobles. They saw him, and they ate and drank. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay there, so that I may give you the stone tablets with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction." So Moses arose with his assistant Joshua and went up to the mountain of God. He told the elders, "Wait here for us until we return to you, and Aaron and Hur are here with you. Whoever has a dispute should go to them." When Moses went up the mountain, the cloud covered it. Then glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day he called to Moses from the cloud. The appearance of the Lord's glory to the Israelites was like a consuming fire on the mountaintop. Moses entered the cloud as he went up the mountain, and he remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.
That must have been crazy to watch that.
Yeah. Pretty wild, that's for sure.
Stampy, you want this next one, or you want me to take it?
I'm just gonna be listening today.
Okay. Oh yeah, no worries, man. No worries. All right, chapter 25. Tabernacle, Ark, Table, Menorah. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, excuse me, "Tell Israel to take up an offering for me. From anyone whose heart compels him, you are to take my offering. These are the contributions which you are to receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet cloth, fine linen and goat hair, ram skins dyed red, seal skins, acacia wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, oxy stones, okay, I'm mispronouncing that. Say onyx stones and settling stones for
Onyx.
the ephod. Onyx, that's what it was. Thank you. Onyx stones and setting stones for the ephod, and for the breastplate. Have them make a sanctuary for me, so that I may dwell among them. You are to make it all precisely according to everything that I show you, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of the furnishings within. Just so you must make it. Now they are to make the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits in length, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. You are to overlay it with pure gold, inside and out, and make a crown of gold around it. You are to cast 4 rings of gold for it, and place them in its 4 feet. 2 rings will be on one side and 2 rings on the other side. Also make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. You are to put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark in order to carry the ark. Poles are to remain in the rings of the ark and not be taken from it. You are to put the testimony, which I will give you, into the ark. Then you are to make an atonement cover of pure gold 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide. Also make 2 chevrim of gold from hammered wood and the 2 ends of the atonement cover. Make 1 cheruv at one end and 1 cheruv at the other end. Of one piece with the atonement cover, you are to make the cheruvim at its 2 ends. The cheruvim are to spread out their wings above, shielding the atonement cover with their wings, each facing its companion. The faces of the cheruvim are to be turned toward the atonement cover. You are to put the atonement cover on top of the ark, and inside the ark you will put the testimony that I will give you. I will meet you there. I will speak with you from above the atonement cover, from between the 2 chevrim. I think I'm mispronouncing that, but the 2 chevrim that are on the ark of the testimony, about all that I will command you for Israel. You are to make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. You are to overlay it with pure gold and make a crown of gold around it. Make a border a single hand width wide around it, and a golden crown for the border all around. Also make 4 gold rings for it, and put the rings in the 4 corners that are on its 4 feet. The rings are to be close to the borders as holders for the poles to carry the table. You are to make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, so that the table may be carried with them. You are also to make the dishes, pans, jars, and bowls to pour drink offerings from pure gold. Always set the bread of the presents on the table before me. You are to make a menorah of pure gold by hammered work. Its base, stem, cups, bulbs, and flowers are to be one piece. There are to be 6 branches coming out of the sides, 3 branches of the menorah out of one side, and 3 branches out of the other. There are to be 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms in one branch, each with a bulb and flower. Then 3 cups made like almond blossoms in the next branch, each with a bulb and flower. And so forth for the 6 branches coming out of the menorah. Within the menorah will be 4 cups made like almond blossoms, with bulbs and flowers. There is to be a bulb under 2 branches of the first piece, a bulb under 2 branches of the second piece, and a bulb under 2 branches of the third piece, for the 6 branches coming out of the menorah. Their bulbs and their branches are to be one piece, all of it a single hammered work of pure gold. You are also to make the 7 lamps for it, and set the lamps up to shed light over the space before it. The tongs and the censers are to be of pure gold. It is to be made from a talent of pure gold, with all these pieces. See that you make them according to their pattern being shown to you on the mountain.
All right. So do we want to stop talking about it for a second?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I've always been curious. So I looked it up before. I don't know if anybody. I'm more of like a visual learner, so I don't know if anybody is curious or not. But I found this.
Are you looking up like what the
Tabernacle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
So you should be able to see my screen.
Oh wow.
It's like a 3D. I thought it was kind of cool looking.
That's super cool. Yeah, I love that.
And I've always wondered, like, well, not even wondered, but it's interesting to think about why. Because, like, especially if you like listen to the like the other religions, right? Like they're worshiping like stone pillars and like rough looking effigies. So like if you think about like what this would be like in comparison to theirs, right? Like it's all gold plated and like satin and there's gems everywhere. It's like almost like a message of sorts. But I don't know. I thought it's super pretty. I think it shows the inside too.
It is.
Yeah, it does. Like that would be impressive even today.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty kind of cool. That's how I learn, anyways. It's just by like looking at it. There's the arc. What the heck was that? That's this Moses' staff.
Yeah, that's super cool. I was actually just thinking that. I was like, man, we should pull up like what, because it's reading this, I can't necessarily put it together in my head.
No, yeah, I mean, you kind of get like an image in your mind. At least I do, but it's like
but not an accurate enough one.
Yeah. It's very rough to say the least.
It's very detail oriented too, so it's kind of hard to keep up with all the details.
Yeah, and it kind of repeats itself a lot. Like that's the part of. This isn't my first time reading Exodus, and this is always the part that, to be honest, was always the part that I struggled with, because it's like it kind of goes into, like it goes back and forth. Like, you know, you're to make a lampstand. It gives you like the measurements several different times. And the altar, so it's like it gets almost like, I don't want to say monotonous, but it gets to be like you just kind of get lost in the sauce, so to speak. But I think it also, like I said, I think the importance of it is it's like this entire part, right, is like even like the laws that we were reading, right? Like respecting your God, laws about theft, like laws about personal injury. Like these are all to set Israel apart, right? And this is what always gets thrown in Christians' faces. It's like, oh, you want to talk about believing in the Bible, but you don't follow these laws. And it's like, oh, well, those laws aren't for us. That's not our covenant. But so that's the reason that we don't really partake in those. And the whole purpose of them, right, was to set the people of Israel apart from their neighbors, because nobody else is really, like, I know, like, a lot of people are like, well, the Bible is okay with slavery. It's not okay with slavery. That's why, like, even if you go back to, like, the part where it's talking about, like, you know, like the man is supposed to be free after 7 years of being a slave, unless he chooses not to be. But then even that comes with like repercussions, right? Because then you get the awl punched through your ear, because God wants you to be free. He doesn't want you to be a slave. But you're choosing to subject yourself to that. So it's like a mark of like, almost like shame of like, why would you, you're willingly giving your freedom up. But so yeah, I mean, he's, I don't like the argument of like, well, the Bible is pro-slavery. It's like, well, very clearly it's not, because it wants people to be free. But
well, not only
also,
that,
it's like, I think to some degree, right? It's like, if you're going to do it, because like his people were going to do it. He knew that they were going to do it. So if you're going to do it, then at least do it with decency, right? Like they're not even really supposed to like hit them to a point where it causes great injury or something. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, not only that, but it wasn't even true slavery. It was indentured servitude.
Right.
They were working off to, like, true slavery is you're working for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even then, that's something that annoys me when people use it as an excuse, as it's not even real slavery.
Exactly. Nope, I agree 100%.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned something. I actually saw a video the other day, Matt, about Cliff. He was out preaching in a school, and like one of the people were talking about how, like, oh, the Bible promotes slavery and all this stuff, and slavery's in the Bible, so it's you can't like it. I'm not going to use the Bible because slavery's in, and slavery's obviously wrong. Well, for one, she was just ignorant, but also too, the Bible has a lot of different things. It has murder, it has rape, it has a bunch of bad things, but they're in there for a reason, so we can learn from these things. It's not saying that
Right.
these things are
Right.
great, but I kind of agree with what you said, Matt. Like, since slaves did exist at that time, it was not considered unlawful to have a slave. Then here are the steps that you need to go, or you need to proceed with in order to do it in a moral way.
Right.
You know, and also too, like some of these, one of them I almost chuckled on a little bit. Talking about, you know, if someone's digging a hole and your ox falls in a hole, then like there's like a rule on that. Which I mean, it doesn't apply to us. It doesn't apply to my life ever. I'll never have to be worried.
Yeah.
Worry
I don't
about
have
my
to worry
ox.
about my
Right.
ox goring
But
somebody.
I think it's good
but-
analogy for other things too.
Sure.
You know,
It is. Yeah, it is.
like if someone is responsible for
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
well-being,
And
like
for those
I had a
parts of it,
friend
right? Like you
a
can
while
definitely draw
ago.
parallels for sure. I agree with that.
Right. Like I had a friend a while ago that had a baby, and his baby, he had a babysitter for said baby, and when his wife came back home, the baby had been like not breathing, like not alive anymore, which is
Right.
very sad. And it was not like an accident by all means either. They determined that he was like thrown against the couch,
Oh.
and yeah, it was rough. But hearing this, you know, it's a good way to say like, okay, well, what makes them, you know, how does punishment apply to them, or what can I
Mhm.
do about this? And I remember talking to him about God and whatnot, because he wanted to retaliate, and I just told him to pray and to do his
Right.
best. And now he's got two more beautiful children, a boy and a girl, and I'm happy for him. So I could see how you could take lessons from said stories and apply them to different
Yeah, I
aspects
mean,
of
even
life.
like the slavery aspect, right? Like you could obviously there's not slaves today, but
Right.
like you could still like let's say you're in a position of a position of authority over another person, right? Like what is
Right.
how do you draw a parallel to that? Okay, well then you treat them with decency and respect. You don't mistreat them. You don't obviously hopefully you're not striking them, but you're treating them as you'd want to be treated, right? You're not you're making sure that their needs are met, especially if it's like something like a child. But even something like as far as like you could do like a more practical example, right? Like say you're a manager somewhere and you have
Mhm.
people that you are in charge of, right? Like treating them, with decency, with respect, and kind of, gleaning a little bit of insight from something like that would be super useful, I think. But,
Right.
I think there's a scripture that says, "Make the truth your own," right?
yeah.
And I think that everyone can look at this and apply it in their lives. I mean, we've had so many different Bible studies now where, you know, maybe it wasn't the general context of this of the discussion, but I learned something from my life and I applied it to me, and I feel like this was talking to me. I've read like so many scriptures I've read. I was like, dude, this is exactly what I needed right now, and
Right.
Right.
so I think that's the beauty of it, like the way Jesus taught, like learning the way Jesus taught. Recently, Matt and I have been reading Matthew through Romans, and like Jesus taught in parables all the time, right? And I think that they were kind of open ended, and I think that was maybe not necessarily intentional. I know it talks about how Jesus said they have ears but they cannot hear, they have eyes they cannot see, so he speaks in stories and parables. That way people can try to understand it better, but people are going to kind of take their own make the truth their own, right? And they're going to hear that, and that might apply to them in a slightly different way than if it's about, oh, don't murder your brother because of this. A murderer might say, oh shoot, I need to stop doing what I'm doing. Someone who's never murdered someone says, hey, well, I just need to love everybody, you know what I mean? And so I think the levels of what you can take from the scriptures are different, but I think they're, even though we don't follow these exactly as far as word for word or what they mean, as far as like an ox or sheep falling in the hole, I still think, yeah, I agree with you guys.
The only thing I'll push back on you on is the reason for him using parables. That's only because what he directly said, and it's because he said that it was not for them, right? So it's only for the people of the book who want to understand and live by the book. So he spoke in parables because it requires us to and this is part of the parable of the sower, right? It's like
Right.
the only way that you can understand the secrets of the kingdom of heaven is by understanding and having that foundation. So you have to read your Old
Right.
Testament and understand your Old Testament before you can understand the full meaning and behind, and the message of the New Testament.
Right.
So I do think that it was intentional to try to require people to do more than just kind of, look at
Right.
face value, so to speak.
No, I definitely, I could definitely rethink that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just my. I mean, I don't remember the exact. I couldn't even tell you which one, but I know there was somewhere when we were reading that he mentioned that, right?
I definitely need to. I would definitely relook on that. I still think that I do. I'll retract that, but I do agree. Like making
No,
sure
yeah, I mean, your overarching message was 100%. Yeah, I agree with you, but
I'll
I
look
just
back
think the
into that.
reasoning that he uses parables is
Because that does put more
specific.
weight on it, right? Like
Yeah.
if it's kind of like the excitement when you came to me when you kind of further understood the parable of the sower. You're like,
Right, yeah.
About that, it was like, wait, that unlocks a whole new idea. Kind of the same thing when we've done research and uncovered some stuff.
Yeah.
It's more rewarding too, I feel like. But also on top of that, there's more to learn, and there's so many different cross references in the Bible and kind of hidden meanings. So it's not hidden, but they're just like they're under the dust. You got shake off the dust a little bit.
Yeah, you have to like actually
read
put
the label.
time into
Yeah.
the Bible in order to see some of it.
Right.
I think the best example of that is when we found the Genesis lineage.
Yeah.
That was completely like obviously now I know there's other people that have seen that and found that, but none of us
we found it
knew that
organically.
prior.
Yeah.
We found it organically by ourselves.
Yeah.
So that was really rewarding and really super cool.
Mm.
And I think that just proves some of what like that that again, parable of the sower, correct, right?
Yeah, and Zach, I don't know if you know what we're talking about, but in the lineage
It's the lineage of Seth.
in Genesis, I believe it's Seth. Yeah, I believe it's Seth. If you look into the names, I think it's chapter 5.
Which is probably going to sound crazy, and I completely empathize with you on that. But we have a video where we showed all the websites that translate the names and stuff too.
We went
Lineage.
deep into it, but
I've got it written down.
Basically Seth in chapter 5 of Genesis. There's it goes through all the lineages, how long they lived and stuff, and we actually ended up. I think it was Stampy who kind of was like, wait, these look very similar between like the lineage of Cain and the lineage of Seth. And we kind of like started to compare them, and we realized that the lineages, the names actually have meaning, and what they mean is actually one of the first prophecies in the Bible. And you could
But not just a prophecy, it was a prophecy talking about Jesus.
Yeah, the redemption of mankind.
Yeah. So it goes. It's the lineage of Seth, and the line goes: Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, which translates, if you translate like the Hebrew to English, it's man appointed, mortal, sorrow, the blessed God. I think it's the is added on, but blessed God shall come down, teaching. His death shall bring the despairing rest or comfort. So, and that's like, I don't know, it like really tripped us out. We were all freaking out when we found it.
Because you can read this
and never know.
And just like, dude, most people, okay, I should say most people, I'm sorry. Me personally, I was like, I don't want to read a bunch of names, how long they live.
No, I do not like
it's good to know.
I didn't like
but like when we were reading it, even I was like, I was like, oh my gosh, so many names. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I would have easily looked over that and not even known the importance.
But even Cain's line has a meaning.
Yeah.
And which is like, and this one I did on my own at some point later on, just because I was curious. But this one was man, right? Because they both start at Adam again. So Cain's line is Adam, Cain, Enoch, Ered, Mahuhael, Methushael, Lamech. So you can see how they're really very close, right? Like there's Mahalalel and there's Methushael, Mahuhael. Like there's very similar Methushalah,
Yeah.
but Lamech, Jubal, Tubal, and Tubal Cain. Sorry, which translates to man brought forth, teaching, fugitive, smitten of God, man of God, mighty, a river flows forth. And then the last part is, right, because it's like that three, Jabal, and Tubal Cain, which kind of translates to offspring. What is it? Offspring of the men brought forth.
Mm.
So that one almost like I'm still not sure about what that one. It's like it almost to me always sounded like it was talking about Noah. I think Stampy said that he kind of thought maybe it was talking about Moses, which I could also see. Right, but I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about who that one is talking about.
It could be just multiple of them because we can come to multiple conclusions depending on what we look at. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was intended to be such a way.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. You feeling under the weather today, Stampy?
I had a lot go on the last couple of days and just mentally wore out.
You sound wore out, man. You're wore out. Well, I feel better, man.
Well, I just gotta get some sleep. Is what I gotta do. I had a very long week.
Shoot, well, I appreciate you being here, man.
No, I appreciate you guys having. I like coming. I like reading, and I like listening. No, I don't think I was here last week. I think.
Yeah, we didn't end up doing it last week anyway, so
Yeah.
everybody was busy.
Yeah.
I got home by like 7 something. I was like, oh no. But I got on the computer and no one was on, so I was like, oh, okay.
Right. No, yeah, I had some family stuff come up. Had to go help my uncle build a fence, and it ended up I'd slipped my mind and time flew by, and I was just unable to attend. But
ain't nothing wrong with that.
I do want to say one thing in chapter 24, when Moses goes up on the mountain, right? And if I'm not mistaken, it says that the appearance of the glory of Adonai was like a consuming fire on top of the mountain in the sight of Israel, right? So they were watching that, right? Like the Israelites were watching this happen, and I think that I feel like this is an important point, especially as we carry on it and go further. But that must have been crazy to watch all that happen. Like, I just kind of imagine that on a mountain, like this freaking, cloud that covers it, and there's this mist, and there's this fire. It was like consuming fire on top of the mountain. Like that's pretty awesome. And plus, I mean, that's just another thing that the Israelites have seen, right? I mean, they were guided by this light in the cloud and this ball of fire throughout the wilderness.
Oh yeah, it's often depicted as like the burning bush, often depicted as fire, which is interesting. So I think it's like fire is like in that way, it's like almost like purifying.
Yeah, I was about to say fire seems to be symbolic of purity within the Bible.
It burns away the unuseful bits, so to speak.
Yeah. No, I think we've read on that. I can't remember where I was hearing, but they were talking about anything unclean, take it outside and burn it, right? I think I was talking about. I think that was actually in Mark or something. I was reading that. I can't remember, but it was talking about the leftovers and whatnot, like to not consume those because they're unclean.
Yeah, like after the Sabbath. Right. Like I think that's what you're talking about, if I remember right. Yeah, they say not to eat it.
Right, and go, take it outside and burn it.
Ramifications, so yeah, burn it. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you guys want to talk about? This one was a lot of instructions, which is awesome, right? Because I mean, just the scriptures that we've read are very instructional, and it kind of shows the intention, right, and how important it was to be done exactly the right way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard the saying: "There's two ways to do something: the right way, and the wrong way." Right, and that kind of goes for certain different, things you might be doing. Some things you can do it, this way or that way. That both work, but it was obvious that God wanted it to be done the right way, which is one way.
Right.
And,
God's way.
God's way. Yeah, that's the best way to put it.
God's way.
Yeah, even like because it's like you go through and you like this is what I want, and then it comes back later and it's like the making of the altar, and it's like we made it 7.5 feet long, 7.5 feet wide, 4.5 feet high. Mm-hmm. So it's like I know there's some symbolism there, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me.
Yeah,
it's like the people of Israel actually following God's commands, so to speak. I think that's what it's supposed to be symbolic of. But
right.
Like what happens when you actually follow through with God's plan, as opposed to not, which is obviously touched on in like Exodus 32 with the calf.
Yeah, no, it was actually
implications of that.
The molten calf and smashing of tablets.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Just are we wanting to read on, or are you guys wanting to call it there for this week?
I'm probably gonna have to. I'm probably gonna have to call it. I got a whiny baby right here, and I gotta get them some food and get these girls to bed. But I will. I'm super grateful, guys. I really appreciate y'all reading with me. And
yeah, no, thank you guys for having. Just an update so you guys know. So I'll be going over to a new work schedule starting next Thursday. So I don't think I won't be able to make it here on 6 o'clock.
That's fine.
Okay. What's your new schedule looking like?
Well, I'll be, as of right now, the schedule will be working from 5 p.m. Central to 3 a.m. And I'll be doing that Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Gotcha.
Okay. Gotcha. Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Maybe. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, me and Matt have. I mean, we definitely talked about when we started. The 6 p.m. Central or 6:15 Central. That if there was any need for a rearrangement or anything like that, we could definitely do that. So, we can. I don't know when's the best time to maybe sit down and talk about that, but I'm definitely open. If Matt agrees, I'm open for an adjustment in the schedule. That way, you could attend and it'd be easier for you.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure you guys know so that you.
I wouldn't mind coming in on a different day.
And I just want to make sure you guys know so you won't be like, oh, he just stopped showing up. No, I got
no.
You've been here pretty much every week since we started it, so.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. So we can. When does that start? Starts next week.
Yeah, this Thursday I'll be starting.
Well, I have to boogie now, but I'm sure we can.
Yeah, we can talk.
We can chat.
Over the week.
Yeah, we can talk over it this week and see. I mean, I'm down for whatever, but I'm positive there's a solution where we can continue as a group and keep on going.
We'll figure something out. So.
Well,
all right, boys.
You guys all stay safe.
Yeah, have a good
night.
Yeah.
Thank you, boys.
Good night, guys.
All right. Later, y'all. Take it easy.
Good night. Remember, all of us are sinners, yet we are loved by Jesus. I pray that you listen to this message and remember the sacrifice he made so that your suffering would not be eternal, but that your love would be. Amen.